"I must go back," our visitor began after a moment, "some weeks before the catastrophe itself."
You may know, Mr. Holmes, that Maestro Caravelli's orchestra has lately completed a season of concerts at the Queen's Hall. It was an ambitious series devoted to the works of the new school, Brahms, Tchaikovsky, and certain younger composers, as well as the classics. The attendance was, at first, uncertain, for London is slow to accept what it does not already know, but in the last fortnight the house had been full for every performance.
The success was due in no small part, her voice steadied with a trace of professional pride, to the appearance of a new soloist whom the maestro had brought over from the continent. You may have heard his name, Anton Orlov.
Holmes's brows rose fractionally. Orlov, the Russian prodigy? I have seen his name upon the hoardings.
He is more than a prodigy, Miss Montreux said earnestly. I have never heard a violin sing as it did in his hands. There is a wildness in his playing, a passion which makes one's very nerves vibrate. I have seen hardened Londoners in the stalls with tears upon their cheeks by the time he had finished the chaconne. The newspapers called him the new Paganini.
Go on, said Holmes. Orlov was the star of the series?
Yes. The programme was arranged so that the orchestra should accompany him in a concerto each evening, with other works around it. The final concert, which took place 3 nights ago, was to be the climax of all. Orlov was to play the Beethoven concerto. We had rehearsed it until every bar was etched in our minds, and afterwards a new Hungarian rhapsody, which he himself had adapted for violin and orchestra.
The house had been sold out for weeks in advance. There were rumours that the Princess of Wales might be present, and that several great critics from the continent were crossing to hear him. It was to be, in short, an evening upon which a man's career might be made secure for life.
But Anton never played that night, Mr. Holmes. He never even reached the platform. He disappeared, vanished utterly, within an hour of the concert, in a manner which I cannot account for, and for which no one has yet given me a satisfactory explanation.
Vanished, you say? Holmes leaned forward a trifle. You must give us the exact sequence of events.
It was on Friday, she continued. The concert was to begin at 8 o'clock. We were called for rehearsal at 4 in the afternoon. I arrived at 3:30, for I wished to try the acoustics from a slightly different position. As I entered by the artist's entrance, I met Anton in the corridor. He was alone and seemed agitated.
"Elena," he said, "it has long been our custom to use Christian names. I must see you after the rehearsal. It is important. Will you wait for me in the green room?"
I agreed, of course, for there was nothing unusual in his manner of speaking to me, save perhaps that he looked over his shoulder once or twice, as though he feared to be overheard. I asked him if anything were the matter.
"Nothing that should trouble you," he answered quickly. "Only some business that I must settle. You will wait?" "Certainly," I said.
"Then I shall tell you everything," he replied. "After we have conquered Beethoven, I shall conquer my own affairs as well." He laughed rather forcedly at that, and we parted.
The rehearsal went forward as usual. The hall was nearly empty, save for a few workmen and the maestro, who was in one of his humours and stopped us several times, particularly in the slow movement of the concerto, to adjust some nuance of balance. Anton played like a man inspired. If anything, he threw more soul into the music than he had in previous rehearsals. His eyes shone, and once, when the cadenza ended, I saw that his hand shook as he lowered the bow. At 6 o'clock, the maestro dismissed us with a torrent of exhortations and gestures. The concert was to begin at 8. We had 2 hours in which to change and rest. I went at once to the green room, as I had promised. It was empty at that hour, save for one of the hall attendants who was laying out some programmes upon the side table. I sat down with my violin and opened the case, intending to run through certain passages. As I did so, I heard voices in the corridor, raised in what sounded like angry dispute. One of them was Anton's, There could be no mistake. The other was deeper, harsher, with a guttural note which suggested a foreigner. The words, however, were in English. I caught only fragments as they passed. You have had my answer. No more of this. You were warned. I will not be blackmailed.
Then the deeper voice. Do you think London is far enough, my friend? Do you think the past can be left in Odessa? We are not finished with you, Orlov. Not until the account is settled.
There was a sound as if of a chair being knocked against the wall, and a short exclamation from Anton. I rose, intending to interfere if the quarrel became violent, when the door of the green room was pushed half open. Anton himself stood in the aperture, his dark hair disordered, a red flush upon his cheek. "Elena!" he exclaimed, with a forced gaiety that did not deceive me. "1,000 pardons. I did not know you were here. I will be with you in 5 minutes. There is a small matter I must arrange." He closed the door again at once. I heard his footsteps and those of his companion receding down the corridor. The voices, however, did not cease, but only grew fainter and more indistinct. I could not make out the words.
5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. At length, as it was nearing 7 o'clock and the time was drawing short, I grew uneasy. I went out into the corridor.
There was no one to be seen. I walked to the end where the passage turns toward the dressing rooms, and there I met Mr. Henry Phelps, the hall manager. He is a stout, bustling man, always anxious that nothing should disturb the comfort of his patrons.
"Ah, Miss Montrose," said he, "I trust you have all you require. Maestro Caravelli has been asking for Mr. Orlov. Do you happen to know where he has gone?"
"He was here not 10 minutes ago," I replied. "He had an appointment, I understood, with some person who came to see him."
"Ah, so it was you they were disturbing," said Phelps with a frown. "I heard that some stranger had pushed his way to the artists' quarters. I shall have to speak to the doorkeeper. We cannot have our soloists annoyed before a concert."
"Did you see the man?" I asked eagerly.
"Only his back as he went out by the side entrance," Phelps answered. "A tall fellow in a dark ulster and soft hat. Looked like half the foreigners in London. But Orlov, I fancy, remained in the building. At least, I met him on the stairs a little after 6:30. He said he was going to his dressing room to rest before the performance."
This reassured me, and I returned to the green room, where several of my colleagues had already assembled. It wanted but 7:45 when Maestro Caravelli himself burst in, pale with agitation and mopping his brow. "Miss Montrose," he cried, "have you seen Orlov?"
"Not since before 7 o'clock, Maestro," she replied. "But this is monstrous," he exclaimed, tearing at his hair. "The house is full to the rafters. The prince of something or other is in the royal box, and my soloist has vanished like a puff of smoke. Phelps!" he bellowed, rushing to the door.
The next 10 minutes were confusion itself. Runners were sent to every corner of the building. The porters were questioned. Orlov's dressing room was found unlocked and empty, his evening clothes laid out upon a chair, his violin case open, the instrument itself in its accustomed place. But of the man there was no sign. The police were not yet summoned, for Phelps and the maestro clung to the hope that some trivial accident had detained him, and that he would at any moment reappear, cursing his own tardiness. The orchestra took their places. The audience grew impatient. At 8:05, with a murmur of discontent running through the hall, we could delay no longer. Maestro Caravelli mounted the rostrum like a man marching to his execution, and gave the signal for an overture by Mendelssohn, which had been prepared as a possible substitute.
The evening was saved in a sense, for London will listen gratefully to anything tolerably played, but there was no question of the disappointment. The programs had promised them Orlov in Beethoven. They had been given Caravelli's orchestra in Mendelssohn and a hastily inserted symphony. There were hisses in the cheaper seats. Scraps of conversation drifted up to us about a drunken foreigner and these temperamental fellows from the continent.
As for me, Miss Montrose's voice shook again. I could scarcely play for anxiety. Between each movement, I found myself staring at the artist's entrance at the side of the platform, expecting at any moment to see Anton rush in, white-faced and breathless, to snatch up his violin and redeem the situation. But the door remained obstinately closed.
After the concert, Phelps, the maestro, and I made a systematic search of the building, assisted by several of the attendants. We examined every dressing room, every passage, even the storage rooms where chairs and music stands are kept. We questioned the doorkeepers and the men at the stage door. Some had seen Olav earlier in the afternoon. None had seen him leave.
At last, near midnight, Maestro Caravelli threw himself upon a sofa in the maestro's room, utterly exhausted. "The man has ruined me," he cried.